has changed. So the sources that are going to be listed are your primary source, so your short story, and 2 secondary sources at least, so your 2 articles. An example bibliography for a work within an anthology would be found on page 424. If you want to see that example, like if you are doing our last story, that came from an anthology. So the last story, Only the Dead Know Brooklyn, that came from an anthology. You'll need to look at that example on 424 and imitate that example for a work within an anthology when you do your bibliography for that story, if you're writing about that story. For the other 2 stories, those actually came off of eLibrary databases. You actually have the MLA formatted bibliographies on that first page for the other 2 stories. So the Master's Black Veil and Freeman's Run both have that on the first page. All you have to do is fill in some missing information. So you would type it exactly as you see it there, and then fill in the information about it came from Georgia Military College Library, which is in Warner Robins, Georgia. And it was accessed, I think it even gave the date that I accessed it. So you just fill in those things in brackets where it says library information, city, state, and that would be it. So it's similar to those 2 stories. Your articles are probably coming from eLibrary databases. So the 2 articles that you find, if you want to cite them correctly, you want to look on page 433, continuing on page 436. It's outlined very closely on page 439 of a writer's reference. Those databases are through InfoTrack. So if you used an article from the Literature Resource Center, that's an InfoTrack one. So the one that you see InfoTrack in it, that's the one you want to follow. Literary Reference Center is an EBSCOhost. So you would use the one that has, you see EBSCOhost in it as a model and imitate that one. For secondary sources found on academicwebsites.edu, you're typically going to use number 28, found on page 432 of a writer's reference. For online academic books available on Google Scholar or Google Books, you'd use number 29, number 30 on page 433 of a writer's reference. And for traditional books, you would see page 424 of a writer's reference. So you can see when you look at your writer's reference, and you're looking at MLA, page 421 lists everything that you can look up on how to cite it, or gives an example one that you can imitate. Don't get too hung up on this works cited page yet. Give it a shot. Do your best with it. On Tuesday, before the paper is due, the paper is due on the 24th of July, so that Tuesday the 21st, I'm going to answer any questions anyone has about papers, and then we are also going to go into the computer lab and work on our works cited pages just to make sure everybody knows what they're doing with this works cited page. It's the kind of thing it's difficult to do the first time, but once you've done it a few times, you get the hang of it, you know what you're doing. If you're trying this, do try it, and then come in on Tuesday with what you've got, and we'll fix it if it needs fixing. Yay! Do try it, but if you become really incredibly lost, you may use Citation Machine if you want, which is citationmachine.net. Basically, you have to choose the correct thing that it is that you're trying to cite, and then you plug in the information, and then it should give you a fairly accurate bibliography for that source. You do want to make sure you capitalize things correctly and spell things correctly, because it doesn't correct anything like that. But that's essentially what you can find on Citation Machine. So don't sweat it, but give the works cited page a shot, okay? And then be prepared to bring everything in that Tuesday. So to kind of go over the rubric, you've got your rubric here too. The rubric is essentially the same as what you've seen before. There's only a couple changes. Notice that this last column here, or line, row I guess, not a column, row, is different. So what I'm grading on here is that basically you conducted research, you did it appropriately, you incorporated that research in a way that was appropriate, and you documented everything correctly, and you made a strong argument. It supported what you had to say. Everything else down here is pretty much the same with one exception. You will notice that it says students are reminded that, as stated in your syllabus, papers will not be accepted if they do not have all required elements. And the required elements change slightly for this paper. I want you to turn in your essay planning, so you're outlining, all research materials, so your articles that you're quoting and using on your works cited page. I want you to turn those in. A rough draft that is signed by a tutor. That is a requirement this time, not extra credit. You may bring it to a normal tutor. If Allison has time to look at a paper individually, her signature would satisfy this requirement as well. And then 2 copies of the final draft. And if any of these elements are missing, a letter grade will be taken off. So make sure you have all those elements to turn in on the 23rd. Bring as much of that as you can and your flash drive with you to class on Tuesday the 21st. All right. Then you have this checklist to kind of keep you on the right path here for the persuasive research paper. So just to kind of make sure that you have everything and that it looks good. And we will actually try to use this as a self-guide checklist, but we will actually do a peer exchange on that Tuesday just to make sure that everything looks like it's pretty good. Okay? So that's it. The end.